Next. Next, we're going to talk about a guy with a problem. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. Have you heard that phrase? All right. I'll sing first. Sanjaya Vacha Eva Muktva Juna Sankhye Rathopastha Upavishat Visrujya Sasharam Chapam Shokasam Vignamanasaha. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, in the midst of the armies, Arjun sank on the seat of the chariot, casting away his bow and arrow, heartbroken with grief. So, what is Arjun's problem? What is anyone's problem these days? So, as counselors, we're going to meet a lot of people who call us when they have problems or opportunities, something is going on with them. Arjun's problem is a very interesting problem, which is to say that he is probably the most capable for his job. He probably has the most, all the reasons in place. He has all the intelligence he needs, and yet he is incapable of acting. He should have done it, because that's why they're in the middle of a battlefield. They're here to war. He could have done it. He has the capability. He has the skills. He's the strongest archer there is, and he would have done it, except for one little thing. He's convinced himself that he's not going to do it. Why? And it's not as if he's going to be swayed otherwise, because this is 147 in the 15 to 20 previous verses. Arjuna has been laying out a PhD thesis on why he should not go to war. This reason, that reason, this person, that person, this will happen, then this will happen, this other thing will happen, and eventually some other thing will happen. These are his reasons, and he sticks to them, and he concludes that he's not going to go to war. And as counselors, we're going to see this pretty much every day, because as people, we see this every day. We have problems, and we convince ourselves that the problems are holding us back from acting. We have choices to make. We know what the right choice is, but we convince ourselves that the other choice kind of looks good too. I mean, I like wheat bread, but white bread looks all right as well. And frankly, the latte and cappuccino, I don't even know the difference between the two. So I'm confused at the Starbucks what coffee I want. And that's just trivial stuff. But in all important decisions, we just have too many choices. Sri Krishna, later, he talks about how when you're confused, Bahushakha, many branches in your thought. This might, I could do this, but then I could also do that, and maybe if I do this, then something else will happen, then eventually something else will happen, and and so on and so forth. We convince ourselves, we create a forest of decisions in our decision tree, and we confuse ourselves. So it's called analysis paralysis, which is close to what our friend is feeling right now, which is he's paralyzed by his analysis. And he's convinced himself that not acting is a good enough choice. I'm not going to do anything because the choices are too many and they're all bad choices. So I'll just sit here, do nothing. But the solution he's given is be one-pointed. But one-pointed in which direction? Pretty much all of the Gita is about finding out what your heart is saying and what your Swadharma is, like you were saying, right? What is it that you need to do is already clear to your heart, but your head is so filled with noise that you're not paying attention. And even if you choose to do otherwise, your heart will eventually bring you around to fighting, which is what Sri Krishna says to Arjun. You can walk away if you like, but you're a warrior, you'll come back and pick another fight. So if it's your duty, you must do it. So interestingly, there are a couple of angles to it that I wanted to pursue in this conversation. One second. So, no, I'm not changing, I'm just sticking to it. So Swami Vivekananda has a very famous arise, awake, stop not till the goal is reached thing. And there's, you would have heard the term razor's edge. It's a common English phrase that we say, it's a razor's edge, right? And it comes, the underlying text is Utishta Jagrata Prapya Varan Nibuddha Shuran Shurasannadhara Shurasya Dhara Nishita
Duratyaya Durgam Patastha
Duratyaya Durgama Patastata Kavayo Vadanti. So the Shurasya Dhara is the razor's edge. And that's why you need to take blessings from the senior adults and seniors, because the choices that you need to make are very, very tough. And the choice is a really hard one to make. It's as fine as a razor's edge. And it requires a lot of attention. And it requires a lot of being present to the moment and being present to yourself. And that's what Arjun didn't have. He had everything else. He had the capability. This is not a incapability issue that he has. That no, I can't fight. I don't know. I don't have the tools, or I don't have the capability to do it. It's not that. It's not even the context. They're in the middle of a battlefield. The context is pretty obvious. They have to fight. Right? It is that there is confusion about. There's a lack of clarity about what needs to be done. And as counselors, we'll be called upon to do that a lot of times, which is a lot of people saying very intelligent things that won't make sense to you because you're not thinking their thoughts. But to them, they've convinced themselves that the forest of decision choices that they have is indeed a very complicated thicket. And now they're confused because it is right for them to be confused. Right? And many times our job is going to be to deconfuse them and bring clarity to them. With that, I wanted to actually show you some of these Gitas because I'd like to get these in your hands. And I'll just describe what these is and I'll pass these along. And let's go it this way. So this one is this one, I'll just show you what this is. This is just the Sanskrit in thick letters. That's just all there is to it. That's one word. At the other end is the English sort of translation and commentary kind of thing. This is no Sanskrit at all, no word by word. No, we just pass it the same way. It's going the same way. Okay. Another version is, this is Sri Hari Gita, brilliant. If you're ever going to India, go buy this. This is actually rewritten in Hindi verse. Very beautiful. It's meant to be sung. It's beautiful. And you can just play around with these. Next up, I like this. This is Georg Feuerstein's Gita. It is brilliant because what he's done, he has written the Sanskrit, Romanized Sanskrit, word by word translation, full sentence transliteration, and some commentary in footnotes. So he's tried to not editorialize to the point that the underlying meaning is lost. And you could still read the Sanskrit, which will become important. And in fact, Swami Vivekananda was talking about it as well. This version is amazing because this is Radhakrishnan's version. It is amazing for two reasons. People either love it or absolutely hate it. And it is very polarizing. And it's polarizing because it's a very pointed point of view from one perspective. And the other side just hates it because he's... with the Gita, some of the translations are literal. Some of them treat the Gita as an allegory or a metaphor. Some treat it as fact. And some treat it as something that they can take liberties with. Different versions are different. For example, this is the SRS, self-realization fellowship, where the Gita in itself might be more allegorical, and there's like it has a wider, deeper meaning, and the meaning is what this text is carrying. So the story is told from a different point of view. This is the SRF, Swami Paramahansa Yogananda version. The other end of that, those two versions, is Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's called as it is because he was completely, he is chafing because people have, all manner of philosophers have written books. He particularly did not like that particular version. So he said, look, philosophers have written it, and if they've taken Sri Krishna out of it, they have made it a whole different thing. It's all, they're imposing their own poetic interpretation. Let me write it as it is. Right? This is a Bhakt's point of view, and it is written as it is with minimal alterations from his point of view. From his point of view, I want to clarify. And finally, if you read Hindi, I would highly recommend this. This is the most beautiful Gita. But there's an English one, there's PDF you can download. This is beautiful. This is Swami Ramsudas. His translation of the Gita is by far the most thorough. You can see that in the weight. But also, it is the most interesting because what he's done is none of these other versions get any close to it. Even Georg Furstein, he translates one word at a time. What Swami Ramsudas does is, in a written form, hyperlink everything. He will take one word and he will say, this word has been said 3 times before, the meaning is slightly different in those two, in this one verse it means this slightly different thing. He goes into the most detail that you can get into. And if there is one Gita you need to read, and if you read Hindi, this is the one I would recommend. But then again, there's an English version as well. This is Swami Ram. This is Gita Press.
This is the Gita Press.
This is
When
the
there's a Gita Press, this is the one.
This is the one. When they say Gita Press Gita, this is the one. There's also another Gita Press Gita, which is the thick English Sanskrit letters. No translation, no nothing. It's just pure Gita. So I want you to flip through these and read these and feel these in your hand, because the texture is different, the feel is different, the way it's written is very different, and the perspectives are different. Many branched.
Add one more.
Huh.
Also, there is IIT Kharagpur have put Gita Super Site.
I'm going to pull that up.
Yeah, that's the other wonderful where you get multiple translations: Hindi, English, Sanskrit, Bhashyas, Vyasa Bhashya, all of those.
So Gita Super Site is just wonderful, and it's online. And some of these, the one I was recommending, Swami Ramsudas, that Gita is here. And several other So if you look at translations and commentaries, you will see Swami Ramsudas over here in Hindi, over here. You will see Abhinavagupta's translation, commentary, and which is marked up into English, which is very nice. That Abhinavagupta's commentary is very, very nice. But again, they're all very distinctly different, because of course there's the Vishishtadvaita schools, the Advaita schools, the Advaita schools, and then there's the regular philosopher type dudes who are translating. So all different perspectives, some of which are available here on the super site.
This Kharagpur, the super site, do they simply cite different publications, or do they have some comment, somebody making?
No. They are only collating different commentaries.
Oh, so that is
and by
called
verse. And so it's by verse, and you can hear the audio.
Oh, I
sung
see.
better than I can sing it.
Oh.
And it's very nice. This is
Mood
nice.
Stokers.
Yes. So you could do a side by side. This is like compare type.
Yeah, in fact, you can display all of those.
Oh, I see.
In fact, here's a fun one. I like this one because, in fact, it's the first verse. We just sang it.
Yeah.
The first 2 words are Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. Now, to a clever one, there's a chapter 13 is Kshetra Kshetragna. It's about the field and the knower of the field. So you do the math and you say the Kshetra must mean something interesting in the first 2 words. But only Abhinavagupta actually spends any ink on that angle. The As It Is does not spend any ink on the fact that there are 2 kshetras in the first 2 words. Why? Because Abhinavagupta has a philosophical rendering of the whole thing. So his angle is that there are 2 kshetras. What you see outside and what's within. Kurukshetra is the field of action, and Dharmakshetra is the field internally. And so that's his angle. But that's evident right here in the first verse. You could do a side by side and you could see what's going on. Now you'll notice Ramsudas, if you're not reading Hindi, as this said, he's not describing anything that Dharma. Kurukshetra is defined as a Dharma Bhumi, as a holy sacred ground. And that's all there is to it from most of the Dvaita and Vishishtadvaita people. They're not reading too much into Dharmakshetra and Kurukshetra as being, a 2x2 matrix of any sort. They're not doing that, which is very interesting. So Gita Super Site allows you to do this and compare to your heart's content, and it's very interesting to see different perspectives. We might give you some of those as homework for you to sort of compare a few different angles on the Gita. And that, and as you're looking at the translations and the commentaries, there are commentaries. Now, the other interesting thing, and we will talk about it when Ashwini ji will talk about political and religious leaders, some of them came into the Gita from the English translations. In fact, as soon as we get into the next segment after the break, we will get into people who read the Gita English first. And English first is how I also started. In fact, Ramesh Menon's English translation, which Ajay ji, you have in your hand, was the one I spent the most time on, which is why it's very marked up. And that's in English, no Sanskrit at all. Just pure English verse, and that's it. Very, very minimalistic. The challenge with pure English is the same as if I wrote a poetry. And sir, you taught physics, right? Or mechanical engineering? Mechanic. But if I were to write a song about the beauty of E is equal to mc square, it makes no sense. It's a physics formula and must be explained in the language of physics. The language of poetry does not do justice to the language of physics. They're not the same place. So something that's been sung in Sanskrit must not be read in English. And I realize that, and this is my personal point of view, of course, if you read in English, you're always reading the interpreter. You're reading their word choices, but you're also reading all of language history. What I mean by that is Sanskrit is a technical language. It's poetic and technical. Our Shastra are written in Sanskrit because each word has connectivity with ideas and notions that cannot be translated simply by converting dhyan into meditation. Those are not the same ideas. And in fact, a lot of confusion results when people say, I'm meditating, which in English means contemplating, thinking about something. And I'm saying I'm doing dhyan, which is not thinking about something. They're two different ideas, but translations are what they are. So the challenge with translations tends to be that they often mislead. And you're always reading both the translator and the language and the faults of the language. So if you're reading some Gita in English, try to read widely. That would be my recommendation, because you have to get different angles to understand what's going on. Don't stick to one, because one person may not have understood it as well as the other. And you see that, in fact, you talk about this, so I won't take away the thunder. But there are risks coming into Gita from the English side. The other is, it is meant to be sung, which is also something I realized later in my life. The singing I'm doing is Ramesh Bhai Oza's sort of cadence, but there are quicker cadences, 5 minutes, 6 minutes per chapter, which you could do as well. And singing is a good way to understand the Sanskrit, because words have defined meanings. Definitions are what binds the words. But the information being carried through the Gita is beyond words. So words must be bent. And that bending is a job of the poet, to bend the space between words. Right? And that's how lovers talk to their lover. It's not a direct word translation. It's you're bending that space. So singing the Gita is a good way to get into it. Even if you don't understand the Sanskrit, it doesn't matter. Hear it. It should just audibly sort of appeal to you. I find that satisfying, because it's a good way to understand how it may have been related and how those words interplay, because you start seeing those words over and over again, and you see that their context and meaning is being changed. So even if you don't speak Sanskrit or don't expect to pick up Sanskrit, just hear it sung, just as while you're driving or anything else. It's always useful, because then you build a ear sense for it. All right.
Is there any, Gaurav, is there any particular person's reciting that you recommend?
Yeah. So I was singing Ramesh Bhai Oza's version, but I'll play another when we come back.
Brahmananda. Swami Brahmananda of Chennai Mission.
Yeah.
Very nice. It's a standard chanting.
Yeah. And there are very nice, ISKCON has very nice versions that are, they repeat the same verse. So if you're planning to memorize, which I'm planning to, then you have to, they just say the same thing enough times so that you can chant along.
So I have a quick reflection. I think when we translate, when we read the translate, whoever is translating, he has to have the not just command over the language, deep understanding of the language, both languages. Unless otherwise, like as you said, one word if I exactly translate depends upon my knowledge of the language, both languages, and it will really you might not get even a complete meaning because we don't know based on what context this particular word is used in a particular sloka.
Mm-hmm.
So if you simply translate without understanding the complete mechanics of the language and the beauty of the language, we just translate. And so in that perspective, which is the good translation? The translator who has command on both language as well as
The meaning
of the mechanics of the language. Who is the best translator so that we can get close meaning?
English translations, my personal bias is two extreme ends, and so you can hold me accountable for both. Srila Prabhupada and Paramahansa Yogananda, both. Good command of English, very strong understanding of the underlying subject matter, but very different takes, completely opposite takes. Those are both, I find them both good, but there's the English translation of Swami Ramsudas, very nice as well.
It's
And Gita Super
the
Site has
person
all
who
the.
translates something
you,
like the Gita
You read all of them. You
has to have a feeling for what he's doing.
Agreed.
I would say, unless he understands what understand. I don't mean understanding word by word. That is a meaningless understanding. That's what probably these people have done. It is not the command over the English language and the ability to think. In English that is important here. You have to think. Must have a feeling for what is written here.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
The person has to know what the Gita is trying to tell him, and if he doesn't understand what the Gita is trying to tell him, he can read the language 250 million times, know Sanskrit, but not
Nothing will
translate this
translate.
properly.
It's not a linguistic. It's not a linguistic experience.
Yes,
It's much deeper.
it is much deeper. It's a feeling for what he is saying.
Spirituality of it.
Yes.
That's the fundamental point that all these 250 translations miss.
Yes.
And each claims I have done a better translation.
Everyone.
And that's the worst of it. And they think they have done it all well, and they don't.
I want to share, Vijay Kapoorji is actually teaching Gita lectures, and all his lectures are available on site.
On the AVC side.
Ashwini Center. The audio lectures are being an excellent teacher, and Swami Dayanandji, the founder of Ashwini, he has, and those books are available free also online, Gita Home Study. So,
Those are very good.
yeah, so and that would be nice.
At least
He actually has a live lecture.
he has a feeling for it.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with the translation or not is another. He has a feeling for it.
On interpretations and transliteration and so on.
Of course.
Gita as a text
He
itself
has a feeling for it.
Prabhupada.
Yeah.
was
And you
said by Shri Krishna
see
on the battlefield, but it was on the spot. You can say translated or whatever by Sanjay.
Conveyed,
right?
sure.
So it is, anyway, one level of translation has happened. But what I learned, and my knowledge is very, very cursory, there's a book called My Gita by Devdutt Patnaik.
I was hoping not to talk about it.
Yes, so but it says, like, just to take this part about transliteration, interpretation stuff, right? It just makes a mention there that, the text is technical, scientific, or whatever you know, but it will always end of the day based on what you take out of it.
that's correct.
So it is very factual, technical, can be timeless and everything, but at the end of the day, it will all depend upon what you take out of it. Right?
Yeah.
So Sanjay said, Shri Krishna said something, Sanjay understood something, he said something which Dhritarashtra at that point also understood in his own way, right?
Sure.
So that sequence has always happened. And then Arjun understood in a such specific way. And the last sentence in the Gita, Shri Krishna also says, I had to say what I had to say, you go ahead and do what you want to do. Right? So the whole sequence of event has been. So I think whichever text we pick up, It is end of the day going to be how you understand out of it, and then action, right?
Yeah, so
You
it's
make sense of it.
yeah, before the break, we're just about to get into the break.
My uncle and auntie, they are in very spiritual line. My aunties passed away. They read that Bhagavad Gita at least 10 times. I'm not joking. At least 10 times. And what they were saying me, in fact, they have given me this big book, what you showed them, the last one.
Yeah.
They have given me that book. They said, Gajana, take this book.
Yeah.
When you get time, just read one by one. Some page here and some page there. So when I go to their place, I used to read. But when I come home, then busy and all. So what they were telling me is that if you read one time, you have different meaning. If you read second time, you have different meaning. If you read 10 times, you have different meanings. So such a, deep meanings are there. It is very difficult to understand one, two times, three times, four times.
Yeah. All
They are
right. So
highly educated
we're just
people.
about to get into a break. So I'm about to.
I
Finish.
have one Gita that is a different from your shown, but what it does, it just break down all the words, so it is very easy to read and easy to understand.
To understand, sure.
And it is from Gita Press also.
Yeah. So in Jurassic Park, the movie, they want to bring back the dinosaurs, and so what they do is they take, some DNA and some monkey bite thingy in an amber thing, and then mix it with chicken, whatever, and then they make dinosaurs out of it. So the process of bringing the Gita to life is somewhat similar. The DNA is already there. The chicken is us. We have to incubate those ideas and bring it out through us. And that is a process everyone has followed, which is you have to make it your own, and then your actions must speak to you as well as others.
That's right. No single interpretation can be all good.
Can do justice.
It's only an interpretation. Each translation is another.
We're taking a 10-minute break. Let's come back after the break, and then we have a game to play. Now,
Just make a
questions
suggestion
come.
before.
Yes.
I want to just make a suggestion. If you want to enhance our study, we could take chapter 2 and do a phone study or group study set up here.
Yeah. In fact,
Before we meet or something. So that way, so if we limit it chapter 2, then it's easier.
Perfect.
Chapter 2 is actually gives the whole saransh of the entire Gita.
It's a preview of the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that will be a good suggestion that
So we might assign readings from chapter 2 and then go to super site, compare, and
we can all come up with
Yeah,
our
and
own
we
way
can
around
work
it.
together.
So if you are interested,
that'll be a
then
good
just
tip. Is everyone familiar with Waldo? You will be shortly.
It's been found.
He's been found many times over. Sir, आप मुझे